Man wanted me to flirt back, so I did, by user space nightlife. This just happened and I'm still laughing my butt off. I'm a 25-year-old MTF trans woman that's been on HRT, hormone replacement therapy, for 3 years now. Because of this, my body looks naturally feminine. Like it takes people a while to catch on. My voice is softer and it hurts to deepen it. This is important information, I promise. I work as a vendor for one of the major beverage companies. Basically, I go to stores and stock shelves of my company's products. I'm listening to music, a playlist of video game themes remixed, with one earbud in, like aloud, when a mid-30s-year-old man walks over. "Wow, girl, you are super thick. Wouldn't mind taking you home with me," he said with a bit too much confidence. I just continue working, ignoring him. He continues, "Oh come on, don't be like that, I'm quite large under these pants if you know what I mean, something a sweet ass like yours needs." I continue to ignore, getting embarrassed and very uncomfortable. That's when the music turns to the theme from Halo and he says what I needed. "Come oh cutie, say something to me." Inspired by the music, I instantly had a thought. It hurts, a lot, to do a masculine voice, however in that moment I took a deep breath and turned to him. I looked at him with a very enthusiastic smile and he looks like a kid in a candy store, bouncing a bit like, "Oh boy, I actually got one." Going back to my roots, I took a deep breath and in the most deep, masculine voice I could muster I said to him, "You're cute as well, sure I wouldn't mind having my way with you." Afterwards I start coughing, my throat hurting, yet it worked. The dude jumped back a good foot and yelled out, "Oh hell no. Fuck this, nope, hell no." He ran out of the store so fast, constantly looking over his shoulder as if I was following him. The store's workers were laughing their asses off, mostly all the female workers. One came up to me and asked, "How did you do that voice?" I could never get mine to sound. "Oh, you're trans. That makes sense." That made my day and is why I'm still laughing in my car writing this. Update, whoa. This blew up way more than I thought it would. 17k upvotes and over 1000 comments. Thank you all so much. There's a lot of the same questions and comments, so I'm gonna add a little clarifications here. The reason it hurts so bad is when I do a deep voice I don't just deepen my voice. I basically sound like the Roach Man from Men in Black, gargling my words. No, not everyone clapped afterwards. That's a lot of people's comments and it confuses me why people are saying that. Again, thank you all so much. This is absolutely incredible experience. Goodbye Internet, by user SimplyTexas. My malicious compliance story. At my last job my main duty was the IT manager for the entire location, among other duties. I had been there for 3.5 years at that point, and as I was trusted by everyone, if I had something important to say people listened. During COVID, while other departments' budgets were getting slashed, and employees were getting laid off, I was able to replace a lot of our aging IT infrastructure. At the beginning of my last year there, the owner hires a young, I only tell the truth, even though you won't like it, narcissist as his second in charge. He hired this bonehead as his successor to run this location, while the owner would focus on opening up a second. In the first 3 months bonehead pisses off everyone, to the point where 15 people from various positions leave the company to find another job. This is during the pandemic, where a lot of people were thankful they had a job, and 15 people were like, "I am going to risk finding another job in the middle of a pandemic rather than stay here." He was that bad. As bonehead started to piss off our customer base and our sales started to suffer, we switched over to cost-cutting mode. The owner had largely checked out at this point. So, long-time vendors were replaced with friends and family of bonehead, services were downgraded or cut, pay plans for the sales department were jacked with, which further eroded the morale of the workforce. One day bonehead comes to me and tells me to stop doing safety checks and maintenance repair on our products so sales could post larger sales grosses. I loudly objected, and went to the owner. As the owner is always happy to hear something about making more money, he threw his support behind bonehead's idea. A few months of this goes by, and after he fired one of my employees on my birthday because he refused to give bonehead access to server room. It was restricted to me, owner and my employee. I knew it was time to go. I find a new job, put in my 2 weeks, of course bonehead stops my direct deposit on payday. The day after I put my 2 weeks in, I decide it isn't worth working the extra 2 weeks and inform they I am out of there, while filing with the state over my wages being withheld. As I am walking out the door, Bonehead reminds me I am no longer an employee of the company and not to get involved with the company's affairs, and possible legal repercussions if I say anything negative about the company. My new job pays more, less hours, less stress. Fast forward to this Monday, I get a call from my local internet provider. They tell me my internet service bill has gone unpaid for the last 6 months, and will get cut off if I don't pay immediately. I log in and see my account is paid. So after a few back and forth I find out I am still the point of contact for my last job's account on their internet service. Remembering what was told to me when I left, I just informed them I cannot get involved as I no longer work there. They asked me for an updated point of contact. If they cannot get one they will be forced to suspend their service. I repeated I am not allowed by threat of legal action to be involved in their affairs and left it with that. An hour later, a buddy I know who still works there, called me and told me they had to stop working as their internet service was shut off. I played stupid, but it took 3 days to restore it. Physics teacher demands we plot the graph as we go despite not knowing the range of values up front. Okay then, would be a shame if we deliberately chose an incorrect scale to make our point, by user Beryllion Truebarb 2935. This occurred many years ago at S-level physics in the UK, 16 to 17-year-olds. I can't remember the exact experiment but it was something like demonstrating the Young's modulus. Basically you are expecting a straight line, until a point whereby the material yields and strains much further than expected by Hooke's law. So we've been asked to get on with the experiment and like sensible students we are all taking our measurements and noting them down. Then once we have our results and know the highest and lowest value for each axis we can choose a sensible scale and draw the graph at a suitable size. We also aren't exactly sure where the yield strength is so don't know how much stress we'll have to apply to demonstrate the experiment. However, midway through our experiment our physics teacher angrily asks us why we aren't plotting any graphs. I explain that we are taking our measurements first so we know what scale to draw the graph at. This is not an acceptable answer. No, apparently we need to draw the graph as we take measurements because this will allow us to spot any errors earlier during the experiment rather than afterwards. This is a bizarre argument in my opinion. Well, you are the teacher, I guess we'll have to comply. So then myself and most of the rest of the class immediately start plotting what data we have, but with clearly not enough space to accompany the entire experiment. Eventually we run into the edge of the paper. Sir, what do you want us to do now? Even angrier than before he gets some sellotape and another piece of A4 graph paper and tapes it together to double the size of the graph paper, with some choice words including calling us smart Alex, which is fair because we are being deliberately annoying but it is also unreasonable for us to have correctly guessed the yield strength of a random piece of copper wire before doing the experiment, to adhere to some nonsense idea of plotting a graph by hand as you take measurements. Realizing what is about to happen, most of the class start laughing. Someone else also requests extra graph paper, and then another, and then another. I think pretty much the entire class requests a second bit of paper. Of course 2 pieces of graph paper stuck together isn't enough, we need more. The teacher had to run to supplies to get another set of graph paper, not happily mind you. I think eventually I needed a 2x3 of A4 graph paper stuck together to make my comically large graph, most of the rest of the class with similar results. There were also other issues like our 30 cm rulers not being long enough to draw the Hooke's law part of the graph ECT. Which of course we made the teacher aware of. Eventually the teacher, thoroughly pissed off at this point, is just standing silently at the front of the classroom. I bet you think you are all so funny, don't you? Before storming out the classroom early. Yes sir, we thought we were hilarious and your rule ridiculous as demonstrated. Funnily enough, he dropped it the next time we did an experiment. In the years after this incident many of us went on to get degrees in physics and several of us are practicing scientists. We had a reunion recently where we recounted some of the incidents we had with this particular teacher, including this one. None of us can see any reason why he came up with that particular rule. We can only assume he misinterpreted something on the syllabus, or was just trying to exert control. Edit, added some context for non-UK users. All the overtime you want, okay, by user SysicDog. First time poster, hope I don't fudge it up. So, this happened a couple years ago when I was 19 to 20, somewhere around then. As a wee lad I got a job working at a local superstore while attending college. I was a cashier, it sucked but honestly wasn't as bad as it could have been. My immediate manager helped protect the cashiers from the higher-ups, but those are war stories for another day. As time went on, as it does, eventually the dreaded holiday season came around, Thanksgiving week to be exact. I got the week off of school due to the holidays and was scheduled to work a juicy 40 hours that week, but unfortunately was scheduled to work all Thanksgiving and Black Friday. My schedule had Thursdays off, but Thanksgiving falls on a Thursday and I was being forced to work. The good news is at least they fed us a ton of food in the break room. That was honestly nice. But I was bummed that I had to miss the holiday with family since I had prepared to have the day off as I thought I would. Now, before we get into the MC, a quick note. The store did not allow overtime, OT. You were given extra lunches, sent home early, whatever they had to do to avoid paying out. If you got OT, you were either lucky or you had a major problem you were being made to handle. Management was salaried, and the enlisted workers were lucky to get 38+ hours. No extra money for the folks in the trenches. As we are a major store that caters to everything from groceries to electronics, we prepare for a very long week that tends to mark the hustle and bustle of the holiday season as a whole. The energy is pretty low as we all really dread this time of year, and I am extra nervous. This is my first retail job in the front lines during the holidays, and I heard of all the horror stories about what is coming. The store manager, SM, gathers up a lot of the workers for a quick announcement that Monday. He tells us that essentially, we are really behind and have a ton of work to do, and this is going to be a rough and wild week. So, he is authorizing any and all OT across all departments from today until Sunday. He told the managers and department heads that if an employee wanted to work, let them work. We need the coverage. Later on, we would discover what he meant was letting us come in on our days off to work an extra shift or two, tack on a nice 8 hours to our paychecks. Whoops. If an employee wants to work a shift, let them work. And oh boy, oh lord, oh gosh, oh golly gee wheelie curs. Did we want to work? Let me tell you, we went crazy. I pulled 6 doubles that week. Someone parked their RV in the parking lot and worked what had to most likely be forbidden due to labor laws. People were working maximum hours. One day I worked so long our manager gave me 3 lunch breaks. Dozens of people jumped at this opportunity. The next day I came in and saw the overnight guys still petering around. We milked that week for every hour, every cent of possible overtime. I don't recall all the numbers and such directly, but I think I went from a 72-hour paycheck to one that had about 118, and around 42 was OT, which was 1.5x paid. It's been a few years, but those numbers feel right. Also, if you work on Thanksgiving, you are given a single-use 25% off coupon to use in the store on one big order. Since I used my overtime on stuff to buy in the store, it felt like I earned an extra 25% on top of that. Management let it happen. No one said anything to SM that week and he sat in his office. It was 2 days after that week that some corporate suits showed up and gave him a verbal beating when they realized he blatantly authorized that. I think early on he realized his mistake, but the die was cast, and truth be told we did need to get the work done. All that OT and we barely were ready for the open door on Black Friday. He was mad, shouted at a couple managers after he got yelled at asking why they let us work so much but they just shrugged. If an employee wants to work a shift, let them. It was immediately dropped, and was clear it would never be allowed again, and policy will remain as it was. I bought a TV, a month end of groceries, Christmas gifts for everyone, a new car battery, 2 new tires, and some random things here and there for myself. It was worth it. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Butter chicken no spices, coming right up, by user JDM_11. I'm currently working as a server in a restaurant, and despite my best efforts, there are some customers who simply refuse to be polite. We had a customer who was incredibly rude, typical Karen type, asking for all sorts of modifications to their order. They specifically requested butter chicken with absolutely no spices. Now, as a server, I understand that everyone has different tastes and preferences. However, this customer's was rude and condescending for no reason. So, I relayed the customer's request to the chef, making sure to emphasize the lack of spices. I could feel a small twinge of satisfaction as I pictured the disappointment on the customer's face when they received their bland dish. After all, they had complained about not having any spice. Well, if they wanted flavorless, they were going to get flavorless. Here's the kicker: I made sure to tell the chef not to season it at all. The chicken had been cooking in the pan just with some butter. Later, when I brought out the dish, Karen attempted to eat it with no seasoning. You could tell she was struggling with every bite without making any comments. Meanwhile, everyone else she was absolutely raving about the chicken, but because she backed herself in the corner saying she couldn't have any spice at all, she couldn't try any. She sat there, desperately trying to salvage her meal with butter and salt. The expression on her face was priceless when I brought her the bill.